The British, knowing things can get bad quickly since they're 20 miles from Boston in potential enemy territory. The colonial militia, knowing they have no chance in a pitched battle against British regulars. Meanwhile, the unknown psychopath that fired the first shot, single-handedly starting a major international conflict. Funny how often this is how wars start. Only takes a single crazy dude. We still have no idea who this person was, but they might be one of the most significant people in history. Philippines, says Mexico. We've saved this. It's not much. That's the 201st Fighter Squadron. But please take this for your liberation. 30 pilots, responds the Philippines. Oh, Mexico, no one can give more than that. Here they are adding it to the liberation of Luzon, which can be added to the 30,000 defeated Imperial Japanese soldiers, 1,500 bombs dropped, 96 combat missions, and 1,900 hours of air combat. During World War II, when the Philippines were fighting Japan, they needed all the help they could get. This fighter squadron's nickname was Aztec Eagles. What an epic nickname. Joseph Stalin be like, we should execute 100,000 German officers. Maybe 49,000 would be enough. Frick this, I'm out of here, says Churchill. Winston, it was just a joke, of course. I'm joking. Sick of this, dude. Churchill has just been triggered. I didn't think that could happen to this man. Be Chairman Mao. Encourage people to criticize him. Let 100 flowers bloom. Let 100 schools of thought contend. Arrest and execute them all. 4D chess move there, Mao. He's like, don't worry. Criticize me all you want. And he did that only to get rid of the criticizers. Places named by the British. Birmingham. Cambridge. Dover. Meanwhile, Spanish Catholic gigachad names. Very long, very beautiful, very symbolic. This is the Spanish and the English translations. They did take their naming extremely seriously. Why didn't Spain just name all our cities? Americans, when talking about Europe or Europeans, versus 7th generation white Americans who have never left their hometown, peaked in high school, and whose whole families lived in the same town since the 1800s when you ask them where they're from. Also, they're 256th Cherokee on their pop-pop side. Me too. Wow, literally me. My great-grandfather's great-grandfather came from a small village outside of Prague. I'm basically 100% Czech. But I find this trend fascinating. Certain Americans have just become obsessive with finding their identity. I don't really blame them. It sounds way cooler than just saying, oh, I'm just from Los Angeles. Republicans, you can help us fight the no-no Germans. In return, will you help us take back Spain from the nationalists? Yeah! Actually recognizes the nationalists as the legitimate government of Spain and send the Republican guerrillas to fight colonial wars under the threat of extradition like a boss. Guess France didn't end up despising Francisco Franco of nationalist Spain as much as they pretended to, at least in the beginning. Spain, hey Soviet Union, our civil war is over. Can you give us back our gold? Meanwhile, the Soviet Union, no. Spain had the 4th largest gold reserves in the world, until their civil war. Finding out you're adopted. Why didn't you tell me? We were scared, honey. Versus finding out you were adopted during Franco's regime. Who were my real parents? Tell me. Man, we're talking a lot about the Spanish Civil War today, aren't we? Kidnapping, I guess, was all the rage. Czechoslovakia became Czechia and Slovakia. Austria-Hungary became Austria and Hungary. Polish-Lithuania became Poland and Lithuania. I guess they didn't know it, but you're kind of dooming yourself when you do this. Whether you hyphen the name or just combine the two names. I feel like that sets your faith you're gonna split up again one day. Alexander the Great being a Macedonian king of ancient Greece. Napoleon Bonaparte being an Italian emperor of the French Empire. Joseph Stalin being the Georgian General Secretary of the Soviet Union. And finally, the mustache man himself being an Austrian Chancellor of the German Reich. I'm noticing a theme here for some reason. I should run for President of Canada. Colorized footage of the Vikings 1,000 years ago finding Newfoundland, Canada. So they find it in the snow. They are the, I guess, earliest Europeans to find the American continents. Then they're like, all right, cool, we're out of here. See ya. Never going back. Catholics in the 16th century, whenever they saw someone whose beliefs slightly different from theirs, they weren't going to stand for that. How dare someone have another opinion? The ancestors you're most proud of versus the ancestors I'm most proud of. I've been pretty much waiting to return back to my old ancestral days. I'm a big advocate for a return to monkey. Stop claiming you're God or draw 25. Meanwhile, Augustus from Rome. My man here had a very severe main character complex. I don't even think main character goes far enough to describe it. The Chinese government in 1979, please have less kids. Versus the Russian government in the 1930s.
People!
What was that?
What do I have to do to make people
Oh, funny how many governments today have so many similarities with the Russian government of the 1930s, especially like Japan and South Korea. Two pilots who just ran out of ammo, one's from America, the other from Japan. The American heads back to their carrier base to resupply. Meanwhile, the Japanese pilot, well, yeah, he's gonna have a different strategy. History nerds, when their history final isn't about niche prototype World War II tanks or about how the Kaiser hated shotguns or had T-Rex arms. Years of the Academy wasted. When the Soviet Navy tries to violently take back their wrecked submarine, but they get scared after you stop responding to their radio calls. Sweden, what were you doing? Sweden probably still holds a grudge against the Russians for that whole Great Northern War 300 years ago. I don't blame them, they were close to winning that. The Soviet Union threatening to invade. Meanwhile, this Albanian leader building more than 750,000 bunkers. He literally said, are you sure about that? He literally referred to it as bunkerization. What an absolutely genius thing to do for such a small country. Make it totally not even worth taking you over. 17-year-olds in 1945 thinking they won't have to go to war. Meanwhile, that same guy 5 years later in Korea. Though the Korean War wasn't as crazy as World War II, still pretty bad. It's probably like the most forgotten about US war in the last 100 years. Use the black, red, yellow flag for Germany or draw 25. Yeah, Otto von Bismarck was just not gonna do that. I was surprised to find out recently this flag's actually been around for a long time. Even before 1919 when they first officially adopted it after World War I. The idea of it had been around for a lot longer than that though. Modern Navy recruitment, please join, we need more nukes. Meanwhile, 1700s Navy recruitment, there's definitely no please, and there's actually not even a phrase. You just wake up one day and you're in the Navy. Some random sailor waking up after having one too many drinks at the port last night. Welcome to the Royal Navy! We're so glad you made this choice willingly and on your own free will. POV, you're about to be recruited into the Navy during the 1700s. Again, people just begged to be a part of it. Pretty easy for them to find new sailors. Orders the ship to turn around before confirming the distress call. Sets ship speed record during rescue. Risks his own ship to reach Titanic ASAP. Gets knighted afterwards. Almost no one gives enough credit to the ship that came and helped the Titanic first. That disaster could have been even more disastrous without them. Glad he's getting the recognition he deserves. The Americans make the XB-70. The Soviet Union panic. You respond by making the MiG-25 interceptor. Soviet Union calm. The Americans overreact and respond by building the F-15. Time to panic again. I recently watched a video about this whole ordeal. I believe the Americans thought the MiG-25 was way scarier than it actually was. So they had a pretty crazy response by building like the best plane ever. In retrospect, it's probably better to undersell what your hardware can do, or at least maintain strategic ambiguity. Can you do something about them beavers? They're making dams and chopping wood. All right, what the hell do we do? The beavers are important to the ecosystem. We can't kill them all. I have the perfect idea, my friend. Oh, did they just receive a one-way ticket to Idaho? Why did I break my box? Wait, they're paratroopers. They literally did move 76 beavers by plane and parachuted them down to central Idaho. You can't make this stuff up. Be an educated Bengali Muslim in West Bengali 1830, make peasants aware of oppression from landowners and cooperate with British authorities. Rise up against the landowners and establish a rule over the region. Build a giant bamboo fort and wait for the British to arrive. Some of my favorite things to read about in history are the little bits of trolling they would do here and there. Just anyone around the world. It seems like every culture likes to do a little bit of trolling, although it did not end very well for this man. The U.S. Congress during the Civil War setting the minimum age for enlistment at 16. Most drummer boys being 11 to 14 years old and were frequently being captured as prisoners of war. Then there's 9-year-old John Lincoln forcing his way to the Union Army as a drummer, getting his drummer smashed, arming himself with a musket and oofing a Confederate officer. He was then promoted to the rank of sergeant by the war's end. Dang, this kid is like 20 years ahead of me. I'm still trying to get promoted to that. Should have just been a drummer boy. Historians be like, do you really think that Napoleon took pot shots at the pyramids? Kinda, responds Ridley Scott, obviously referring to his film Napoleon. To be fair, I don't think he actually thought that. I think he was just trying to make the movie entertaining, but that obviously backfired. The fall of Constantinople be like, yo Constantinople, wanna buy a big cannon to defend Constantinople from the Turks? Sorry, I don't really have any money, right? Yo, wanna buy a big cannon to take Constantinople from the Byzantines? They didn't need to hear anything else. They was just trying to get those bad boys sold. They was businessmen doing business. Berserkers in movies, I just oofed 13 men. Wow, you're so cool. Berserkers in reality, I just oofed 13 men. Stay away from my family, outcast. Really love the recent meme trend of kind of like making the Vikings seem like less like just giant terrifying monsters. I mean, some were though, some were. Sometimes they were also just farming. Achilles, I'm invincible, nothing can stop me. Then there's Achilles 5 minutes later. Really? That's his kryptonite? I still really want to name my son Achilles for some reason. That might be dooming him and his ankles though forever. Sir Isaac Newton was only 23 when he discovered the law of gravity. T-Pain was only 22 when he rhymed mansion with Wisconsin. How did he even do that? I can't even do that right now. Dacian, Roman, and finally Slavic to top it all off. All three combined to make, well, Romanian Romania. It's like the Powerpuff Girls format. Sugar, spice, everything nice. Except the opposite, I guess, for Romania. Hungarians to Romanians, you have no history. Meanwhile, just a fraction of Romania's history, having one of the most famous figures in history, meanwhile, fought the Romans, defeated the Golden Horde in Moldova, and have always regained Transylvania. I'm actually surprised anyone's even claiming Romania has no history. That doesn't even make any sense. A romantic poem in German? Nah. How about a war declaration in Italian? This is literally how the whole world be like. Poor German. They'll just never be considered a romantic language. I mean, neither will English, to be fair, but it's 750 BC, and we have a little Greece in Rome. It's 146 BC, and these two are fighting. 116 AD, and these two are coming together to make modern Europe. We have them now fighting on the same side as Byzantium during the barbarian invasions. The 540 AD Justinian reconquest of Italy. That was definitely a beautiful moment between these two. Once again, fighting during this time, basically the Venetians versus Byzantium. 1910 to 1920, Italy and Greece on the same side. Them once again fighting in 1940. And here they both are all old in the European Union together. A romantic story. One of my favorite things about this diplomatic relationship is they've been through so much, yet they still love each other. Like, you would think there would still be a little bit of anger. This only happened less than 100 years ago. But no, they're still kind of like this married couple in love. A lot of their history is just fighting against each other, yet they're besties. The movie director Robert Rodriguez. Okay, I'm gonna make this movie called Spy Kids. It's gonna be pretty low budget, kid oriented, and may make a lot, you know, I think it could be fun. Meanwhile, Antonio Banderas, George Clooney, Steve Buscemi, and a whole lot more, I'm in. Okay, to be fair, some of these actors would end up coming into the franchise later on, like at the sequel, but it's crazy how many people were like, yeah, I'm down to do this. Insane cast. Also, random fact, I went to school with this kid. I think it was like 2nd or 3rd grade. I don't have the like classroom pictures to prove this, so probably no one's gonna believe me. Like, the trailer for the first movie had dropped and the whole school was just going crazy. That's literally all I remember. I don't think I ever saw him again. Maybe he went to a different school, I'm not sure. I remember being friends with his brother. Big thanks to my patrons. You can find a link in the description down below to support me. The beautiful Megan Underwood. Drum your dad, back with the milk. Look outside. A fat I normal. Cannot sleep without Jack Traven's annoying Amateur friend. Archaeology. Carmel Saida. Inquisitor John Denver. KirinoIsBestGirl. Sebby, if you hear this, I love you. The Great Ralphie. Mexican 760. And ZaneyBoi.